So what I'm doing now is I'm applying our little posts that we 3D printed uh, to the units. Why? Because it has been shown that there's always going to be an issue with marking things on the table. Now, mind you, you can always use the roster, right? You don't have to mark it on the table at all. If players want to have it secret what the damage is, sure, you know it when it happens, but you'll never remember the enemy's status on a unit if you use the roster card, hence the reason they were created. But in this case, I'm putting these little posts we 3D printed on these guys because it's better to have the O-rings put on a post than it is to put the O-rings on the figure. Now, yes, to get the O-ring off the figure, just tip the unit upside down and the ring falls off. Which reminds me, we don't put these little posts on command stands. Maybe an idea that we should look into. Okay, so let's put these back where they were. The reason why I'm doing that is because what I did is I just threw them out there randomly. But now when I look at this, I'm like, you know what? Let's just put them out there like that. Let's just say the Romans have approached the situation like this. And you'll notice that one benefit is the Romans have one additional skirmish stand. On the other hand, I should say two additional skirmish stands. On the other hand, the Carthaginians mounted skirmish stands. Yeah, I never thought about putting a post on the commanders. I don't know what purpose that would serve, but it might serve something. Not only a way to move the commanders around, because you know what? Because we use sticky tack instead of hot glue or other glue to put the posts on the movement stands. Grabbing the units by the, let's make sure I stick it on there before I grab it. You can actually grab the whole unit by its little post. Can't hold it for very long because gravity is going to pull that off. But that's pretty. See, it started to come off. All right. So you can actually, if it was glued on, it wouldn't be such a risk. And of course, it always depends on how much glue or sticky tack you put on there. Okay, now it's proving me wrong. All right. So if you want to try and move the unit by using the post, okay, but just bear in mind that that's not glued on. So in other words, don't do it. Anyway, it was an option. So what I was going to say was, let's just go ahead and play this. Let's just test this as if this is how they're arranged. But you wouldn't have the heavy infantry next to the elephants because that would be an overwhelmingly heavy thing. Oh, maybe you would. But without the skirmishers being with the elephants, it makes the elephants relatively vulnerable to missiles. So in this particular case, I'm going to change this up. And why aren't I putting mounted horses next to the elephants? Because you can't do that. It was reputed, it has been documented, if you want to call it that horses would not go anywhere near an elephant. So in our rules, we say you can't come closer than 4 or 5 X's to an elephant. Horses can't stand the smell, as if men could. But at any rate, I'm going to leave the horses over here and just take one stand of skirmishers and put it in front of the elephants. So just like that. And obviously the elephants are not going to go through that forest. Skirmishers could, but certainly not the elephants. Okay, so all the troops now have the little posts on, and we have our 3-ring. We have our ring markers for the game table. I'll put that aside as well. And as you can see, I got my mouse, so I'm able to access and use my tablet without having to reach and leave the view, the side shot of Terry moving away from the camera. So that's where we're at. Let's do a test. And I know, yes, we always call it a test, because it almost always is. Let's move this stuff out of the way. And I'll give the Romans their wagon, which we'll put in the back. So yeah, I think the distance is, it's pretty far. 5 hexes would be about right distance away from the elephants with horses. Now, this is different for the Carthaginians, you could say, and probably is, because after a while, being around those elephants, the horses would get used to it. So in camp, on campaign, I'm sure that I would, that you put the horses next to the elephants as long as possible, get them used to it. So let's assume here that that didn't happen, and the horses, our own horses, cannot be around our own elephants, speaking as a Carthaginian. So when you look at the two forces involved here, the interesting thing is that the Romans are very compact and the Carthaginians are split by this creek. So what's the value of the creek? The creek, when you go across it, is going to cause a terrain effects hit on your unit. Enough of those terrain effects and your unit becomes fatigued. Crossing at the fords, however, costs nothing. So you can go across it without any issue. You count the hex, but you can cross it without any issues. Meaning that the water is very thin at that point. More like a puddle. All right, so that's where we're at, and we'll come back with our first activity. So, here we are. So, phase 1, troops are in place. Phase 2 will be to see who goes first. I guess we'll just throw it up to a die roll. Why not?